So today we're going to look at making this circular bobble motif for the bubble pop blanket. My cat will be helping, and we're just going to use some acrylic double knit yarn and a 4mm as a G hook. Okay, so we're going to start by making a magic ring where you just wrap the yarn twice over your fingers, tuck the hook under, pull a loop through, turn it, and then we're going to work 12 double crochet into this ring. So I always chain 2 to start and I don't count it as a stitch. I have a separate magic ring tutorial, so I'll link to that below. So I'm just going to quickly work my 12 double crochet, that's US terms, into this magic ring. So now I've checked I've got 12. I would just pull that ring tight. Always pull till you hear the little squeak. There it is. And I'm going to join with a slip stitch. So for each round I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the first stitch. So we'll hide that chain 2. Pull that tight, and then I'm going to turn and I'm going to chain 2. Now when you work the first stitch of the next round, you want to miss that because that is the slip stitch that we just used. So you want to work into the top of the last stitch of the previous round. So in the first stitch I'm going to work 1 double crochet and 1 cluster. So my clusters are essentially a treble crochet 5 together. So I'll show you. So I'm going to yarn over twice, insert, up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's part 1. I'm going to do that 4 more times. That's 2, 3, 4, 5. So I should have 6 loops on my hook when I finish this. 1, 2, 3. There we go, there's all 6. So then to complete this stitch, I'm going to yarn over and just pull through all 6 loops. And I'm going to go straight into the next stitch and work 2 double crochets. And then I'm going to repeat that the whole way around. So I'm going to do double crochet, cluster, or bobble. I've written a whole blog post about all the different types of bobbles and clusters. I call these cluster stitches, but they do look quite bobbly. So I'll put a link to that below as well, so you can have a look if you're interested in bobbles. So I'm working my 5 treble cluster. Hang on. Okay, classic mistake there. I only yarned over once on that last bit. You can see that's shorter. So I've got, that's my half, and then I've done 3 of the 5, and you know that because I've got 4 loops on the hook. So let's do the 4th and the 5th. So let's just check I've got my 6. So I'm just going to go away and work that right around the ring. So that's 2 double crochet in the next one to complete that repeat. So that's double crochet, cluster, 2 double crochet each way, so you'll end up with 6 bobbles or 6 clusters with 3 stitches in between. So I'm just going to crack on with that. So this is working my last cluster, and then I'm going to work the last 2 stitches just in that last stitch, which is the bottom of the chain. and I'm going to join with a slip stitch to here, which is the top of that first double crochet. So you can see I've got my chain 2 and that's the top of the stitch, and I'm going to turn, chain 2 to start the 3rd round. So these bobbles, the clusters, will always be worked on the wrong side because they kind of pop out away from you. So that's usually an indication of whether you're on the wrong or right side. So again, I'm going to skip that slip stitch and work my first stitch into the top of the last from the previous round. So I'm going to work 1 double crochet in the first stitch and then 2 in the following stitch, and I'm going to repeat that all the way around. So with the cluster you can see that stitch is a little bit longer there, it's kind of tucked at the back. It can be quite easy on this round to miss a stitch. That's my last stitch, and then I'm going to work a slip stitch to join the round. I'm going to turn and chain 2, and again miss that slip stitch, and into the first stitch I'm going to work 1 double crochet and 1 cluster. So there are my 6 stitches, yarn over, pull through all, and I'm going to work 1 double crochet into the next stitch and 1 double crochet into the next. So that's my 4 stitch repeat, which I'm going to make around the circle. So that's 1 double crochet, 1 cluster, and then 1 double crochet in the next 2. So I will repeat that all the way around. So after you've worked your last cluster, you'll work those last 2 double crochet. Oops. Into the last 2 stitches. And then again you will slip stitch to the top of the first stitch. Can get a bit rolled around with this. It's just here. And then turn and chain 2. Then we're going to start the final round where I'm going to work 1 double crochet in the first stitch, the second stitch, and the third stitch, and then I'm going to work 2 double crochet in the next stitch. So it's a repeat of 5, and we're going to have 60 stitches at the end of this round. So it's double crochet in 3 and then 2 double crochet in the 4th. So I'm going to just repeat that the whole way around. So my last 2 stitches will be in the bottom of the chain there. Now, because this is the last round, instead of joining with a slip stitch, I'm going to use a little trick that is going to stop us having an extra stitch, because when we come to square the circle later, that could cause problems. So I'm just going to, I've just pulled that thread, that strand of yarn through. I'm just going to thread it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to effectively hide that stitch by creating another one over the top. So that will be where I would slip stitch in. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go from back to front through there. There's various different ways of doing this, but this works for me. And then, so you can see I'm going over that other stitch, and just pull that. And then I'm going to thread the yarn back through the top of the stitch that I've pulled it through. And then I'm just going to pull it tight enough to create a new stitch. So you've effectively got the V of a new stitch just there. Just pull it a little bit tighter. And I'll turn that over, and I will just secure it with a few stitches. You don't want it too tight because it does that. I'm just going to pull that back out. There we go. Just helps the join to be a little bit more invisible. So I'm just going to weave the ends in a little bit. Oh, somebody's come to play. I like to weave the ends right through. There's nothing worse than an end falling out in the middle of a blanket. Okay. And I'm just going to sew this end in two. I'm a sew as I go girl, sometimes. So when you're sewing in magic rings, I always sew through a couple of stitches in the same direction. Then I always go back into the other direction as well, just again, if the middle comes out of this, it can be a bit tricky to fix. Sometimes it can leave a bit of a lump, but I'd rather that than everything unravelling. And then we'll back through the other way just for luck. And there we have a little motif. It's a little bit different to this one because this one, whoops, uses a slightly thicker yarn, but once they're all squared out, you won't notice. Now, just so you can see the reality of what I work with. This little miss has been watching the whole thing.